Welcome, my dear friends. Myself, Professor Dr. Rajendra Raghuveer Deshpande, would like to welcome you all in my Ayurveda Academy YouTube channel. My dear friends, today's topic is related with the research methodology, and the proper title of the today's video is research process or research steps. That means any researcher, if he wants to start the research, what should be the steps that he must follow? I think everybody knows that I am MD in Ayurvedic medicine and MD in Ayurvedic physiology. For paid online consultation, you can definitely WhatsApp on 922-6810-630. Also, you know that research methodology and medical statistics or biostatistics, I have written the book with Dr. Subhash Ranade and all the other authors. This book is published by Manakarnika publication from Pune. So you can find it out on the internet and you can definitely get this interesting book. This book is very useful for the final year students of BAMS as well as for the MD or MS students who are doing the different subjects of Ayurveda, that MD and MS. So let us start to discuss what the research process is content of. The research process in the medical science involves several steps, the different steps that help researchers to develop and answer research question. Now, let us start to take the overview of these research steps with simple examples. Step number 1 in the research process. First, the researcher must formulate some research question. He can identify the research gap or the problem and formulate a very specific, concise, and relevant research question. For example, what is the effect of low carbohydrate diet on the blood sugar to control the diabetes mellitus type 2? So this is the research question. Research question has some mnemonics, how the research question should be. It is called as finer criteria. FINER. Finer criteria in the development of good research question. So it is very easy to remember the word finer. FINER. If you remember this word, automatically, if you try to understand like a mnemonics, it will help you what type of the research question we should develop. F for feasible. That means whatever the research has been taken, adequate number of the subjects or the patients should be available. Adequate technical expertise also should be available. There must be affordable time and money for that researcher and manageable in scope. So this is called as feasibility of the topic that we have taken. Number 2, I for interesting. That means whatever the research question you are developing, getting the answers of that research question intrigues the investigator, peers, and also community. So it should be interesting. N for novel. Research question should be novel, confirms, refutes, or extends the previous findings. E for ethical. Amenable to a study that institutional review board will approve. Internal Ethical Committee, REC, should approve your research topic. R for relevant. Your research question should be relevant to the scientific knowledge, to the clinical things, and to the health policy, and also for the further or the future research. So, research question should have these finer criteria: FINER. F for feasible, I for interesting, N for novel, E for ethical, and R for relevant. We are talking about research process, the steps in the research. Step number 2, conduct a literature review. Gather and analyze the existing researches on the topic to gain a deeper understanding of the research question, and the researcher can identify the potential research gaps. For example, search for the studies. You can use the PubMed site. PubMed. On the effects, again we are taking the same example. Effects of low carbohydrate diet on the blood sugar control in patients with type 2 diabetes. So we have to find out the different researches related with the carbohydrate, related with the food and diabetes, related with the type 2 diabetes, and you have the different journals available on this particular site of PubMed. We are talking about literature review. Literature survey is a collection of the research publications, different books, and other documents related to the chosen research topic. Literary review is a part of research study which sets the broad context of the study. Sources for the literary review include the books. For example, in Ayurveda, we have the Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, Ashtanga Sangraha, Ashtanga Hruday, Bruhatatrayi, and Yoga Ratnakar, Manav Nidan, and Sharangara Samhita, Laghutrayi. Then you have to see for different articles, abstracts, reviews, dissertations, websites, and the different databases for the literature review. It sets the scope of the study and establish the theoretical framework for your research work. Review of the literature help for the different things. Number 1, literature review can sharpen your research question, reformulate it, or define other closely related problems. For example, we are talking about type 2 diabetes. You can take into consideration the aspect of gestational diabetes, juvenile, that is type 1 diabetes, etc. Another thing by the literature review, number 2, get a proper understanding of the chosen problem. Number 3, because of the literature review, the researcher can acquire proper theoretical and practical knowledge to investigate. Fourth benefit of the literature review: literature review show how the problem under the study relates to the previous research studies. So it can establish a link in between previous research and present research. Literature review can also tell you something whether the proposed problem has already been solved? If not, it's okay. But if yes, how your present study is different than the previous one? So these are some 5 important benefits or helping by our literature review. We are talking about research process or the research steps. Step number 3, researcher should develop research hypothesis. Based on the literature review, the MD or MS researcher students can formulate a scientific, then testable hypothesis which can address to the research question. For example, we are talking about the low carbohydrate diet and diabetes 2 or the maturity onset diabetes mellitus. So, hypothesis can be patients with type 2 diabetes who follow a low carbohydrate diet will have improved blood sugar control compared to the patients who do not follow a standard that is low carbohydrate diet. This is my hypothesis that I am going to check it for. Next, regarding the formulation of hypothesis. What is hypothesis? Hypothesis is a scientifically reasonable prediction. Number 2, hypothesizing is done. That means hypothesis is done only after the survey or relevant literature review and learning the present status of the field of research. We are talking about hypothesis. The hypothesis can be formulated based on previous researches and observations. We are talking about formulation of hypothesis. A hypothesis should always explain what is expected to happen. It should be very clear and understandable, be testable. It should be testable. It should be tested, be measurable, quantification, and contain an independent as well as dependent variables. Hypothesis is usually written in the form of an if-then type of statements. This statement gives a possibility, that means if, and explains what may happen because of this possibility. Then it will happen like that. The statement could also include may. For example, our low carbohydrate diet and diabetes mellitus. What we can say? If the patient takes the low carbohydrate diet, then blood sugar control will be more better. So if and then, use of if and then. Next, aims and objectives in the research. Aims, what is aim? Aim means the researcher is hoping to achieve at the end of research. That aim, our aim, should be very clear and concise statements, but expressed in general terms. Objectives are how the researcher is intended to achieve his aim or her aim. Aim is what, and objective is how in the research. Aim is what? What I am going to study, the effect of low carbohydrate diet in type 2 diabetes mellitus, control of sugar. So now I have to explain how I am going to do that. The steps to achieve my goal is called as objective. Now, how our objective should be? Again, there is a mnemonics our objectives or research objectives should be SMART. Research objectives should be SMART. 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 This is English word, SMART. Now let us see what is this SMART indicates. SMART word is like mnemonics. S for specific. The research objective should be very specific. Avoid general statements. Include the details about what is going to be done. M is measurable. The objective should be having definite outcome. Then A, that is achievable. Our objective should be less ambitious, but completed objective is better than over ambitious that cannot possibly be achieved. So it should be achievable objective. R for realistic. Logistics factors to be considered like time, expenses, skills, access to the sensitive information, and participants' consent. Last T, T is equal to time constraint. Be aware that time frame of the project. That means MD or MS students must understand how much time they will get to do this particular research. Usually the students get 1.5 years. So my dear friends, your objectives to achieve your goals should be SMART. S for specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for realistic, and T for time constraint. Next will be material and methods. Generally, material and methods are discussed together. This particular section should include a concise description of the materials, procedure, equipments, including how the study will be conducted, how the data will be collected, and what statistical test will be applied, which type of the graphics will be used for interpretation of the data. There should be enough detail so that in the future, any other researcher could repeat your own research project. Now the research process, research steps. Step number 4, choose a research design. Select a research design which will best suitable for the research question and also hypothesis. So research design can be experimental in the laboratories, can be just observational, or maybe quasi-experimental. Most of the times, these final year students having the internal medicine subject, Kaya Chikitsa subject, their researches are like clinical researches. But some students from the basic principles, they choose the fundamental literary research. We will take one example, a randomized controlled clinical trial. Randomized controlled clinical trial, this design could be used to compare the effects of low carbohydrate diet to a particular standard diet on the blood sugar control in patients with type 2 diabetes. Next will be step 4, step 5. Develop a research protocol. Create detailed research protocol that will outline the research design, methods, and procedures. including participant recruitment, data collection, and data analysis. For example, develop a protocol which will outline the inclusion and exclusion criteria for admitting the patients. You can also prepare the diet plan and methods for measuring the blood sugar level. Research process or research steps. Step number 6, obtain the ethical approval from the Internal Ethical Committee, that is REC. Submit the research protocol to an institutional review board or ethical committee for review and approve to ensure the research, your particular research project meets the standard ethical guidelines. For example, submit the protocol to the Institutional Review Board IRB for review and approve before commencing your proper study. We are talking about research process or the research steps. Step number 7, recruit the participants. Start your project. Recruit participants who meet the inclusion and exclusion criteria obtained in the research protocol. For example, advertise the study in the local hospitals, clinics, and online platforms to recruit your participants, mean your patients with type 2 diabetes. Observations. What is observation? Observations are systemic data collections. Researchers use all his or her senses to examine the patient in controlled settings. Guidelines for carrying out an observation are: your observation should be unobtrusive, be objective while observing, and be scientific as well. We are talking about research process or the research steps. Step number 8, collect and analysis of the data. Collect the data from the patients according to the research protocol. Then start analyzing the data using statistical methods. For example, collect data on blood sugar control from the patients and analyze the data using statistical softwares to compare the effect of the low carbohydrate diet versus standard diet prescribed to the type 2 diabetes patients. We are talking about research process and research steps. Step number 9, interpret the results. Interpretation of the results of the data analysis in the context of the research question and hypothesis. For example, if your research shows that the low carbohydrate diet improves the blood sugar control in patients with type 2 diabetes, this would support your research hypothesis. Step number 10 in the research process, disseminate research. Disseminate the research findings through publications, presentations, and other means to share the knowledge with the scientific community and stakeholders. For example, publish the research findings in a peer-reviewed journal and present the results in the conferences to share the knowledge with other researchers and healthcare professionals. Now the question will be how we can communicate this my research. So methods of communication of research. After the statistical results are calculated and analyzed, the findings need to be communicated. Relying on the word of mouth alone or simply writing a summary report will not help to make the needed changes in clinical practice and will not energize new people to conduct or participate in the research. Methods of communication of research. Communication can be formal or informal and can occur in a multitude of presentations. Way to promote and disseminate research findings include number one, participation or publication of findings in scholarly journals. Number two, presentations at national or local professional conferences. Number three, written clinical summary statements. Number four, presentations at the journal clubs. And last, of course, your dissertation or the thesis. Research process or the research steps. Step number 11, that is evaluate and refine. Evaluate the research process and refine the research question, hypothesis, or methods as per the need for the future research. For example, your PhD or another student's MD or another student's PhD. For example, reflect on the research process and identify the areas for improvement. For example, refining the research question or improving patients' recruitment strategies. My dear friends, today we have discussed a lot about the research process or the research steps. I am very much thankful for your enthusiastic participation as usual. I request all of you to like, share this video and don't forget to subscribe my channel to boost Dr. Deshpande's energy. I wish all the best. Take care and see you in the next video. Thank you very much. I wish all the best.